Welcome to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast with your host, legendary powerlifter and strength athlete, Chad Ikes. For most, the journey of strength starts in the gym, but should inevitably expand through all aspects of life. Join us as we discuss all things strength. Now, here's your host, Chad Ikes.
Hey, boys and girls. Tonight, and I'm doing a late night podcast here. I've been, as everyone knows, I have narcolepsy, some sleep issues, some depression issues, and I've been struggling a little bit with that. So I'm a little bit behind on everything, and I'm trying to kind of catch up and do a couple extra episodes. And the other day, I posted a picture on Instagram of my soleus muscle, which is the muscle in your deep posterior compartment behind your gastrocnemius or calf muscle. And mine was popping out really good due to surgery. So I posted a picture of it and told a little story of it, a surgery that I had. And you can only post so much. And I think there's a lot of funny parts to this story and some lessons to be learned, some valuable lessons for me that I learned through this process. So I thought I would do a podcast and just tell the whole story. Hopefully you guys find it interesting. I will come back in the end to a little bit kind of how it goes into lifting and how it helped me with my lifting and helped me mentally and a lot of things like that. The interesting thing, though, was I had a couple friends write me hey, how are you doing? You know, what happened? And I'm like, didn't you guys read it? That's a surgery that happened in college. It's not new. There's nothing wrong with it. It's fine. I lived my whole life with it, which was interesting. And then I also had some people either send me pictures or stories saying, oh, that's not that bad. I deal with this, or I had this, or I know someone that had this. And I always find that interesting because I'm I didn't post it to try and one up anybody. I didn't post it trying to say, look how bad I have it. Poor me. Actually, this post was posted because I just thought it looked funny. I've always thought it looked funny, and I thought I would post it. And I have 2 huge scars that people ask me questions about in person. A lot of times I'll make up the goofiest story I possibly can, but I always let everybody off the hook in the end and tell them the truth. So it's funny to me that people jump to that immediately, oh, you're trying to say you have it so bad. It's no, I'm actually, my life's pretty good. I'm pretty content. Well, I shouldn't say I'm content because I'm always striving for more, but I mean, I feel gratitude for the life that I have and the things that I have and the person I've become. And I'm not trying to one up anybody. I'm definitely not trying to make anyone feel sorry for me. So here's the story. Somewhere, probably my junior year, started getting all these pains in my lower legs. Running just got to where it just sucked. All of my gym teachers were actually my football coaches, and I'm like, Coach, I got shin splints or something, man. My legs are killing me. So the good part is I didn't have to do shit in gym class for a long time. And then on the football field, I kept trying to go, and I would just hurt. I would just be in pain. And I would get to go to track camps. I think my junior and senior year, I went to track camps at Mizzou. And this was something that was not easy for my family to afford. So I always felt very gracious to be able to get to go to these camps. And I wanted to get all the information I possibly could. So I would stay there as long as I could. I would throw as long as I could. Every minute the coach would give me, I was trying to work. And then at the end of the day, when everybody was walking back to get food and go to bed or whatever, I couldn't make it. I would literally have to stop and rest because my leg, it just hurt so bad. And I would limp my way back and come back the next day. And I mean, I was there every day putting in the work. With football, I was doing the best I could. I was still trying to run. You know, I'd force myself. I still never came in last. It didn't matter how much pain I had. And so we kept trying to figure it out. And I had guys like some of the doctors like, nope, you need orthotics. So we tried orthotics. Nope, that didn't work. Guys are like, you have stress fractures. We did all the x-rays. We did all the studies. No stress fractures. And just no matter where I went, even when I was at Mizzou, I got the athletic department. They had all their guys there still and their doctors and stuff. And they all looked at it. None of them could figure it out. So eventually I decided my senior year that team sports really weren't my thing because I didn't feel like people wanted to win as much as I did. And that's no fault to anybody because everybody does their own things. But like for me, it was like, you know what? I'm really not, the team sport thing is not for me. I really want to win. I really want to take responsibility for winning, or I want to take responsibility for losing. And it just wasn't my thing. So I started, right when I quit football, I started throwing immediately. And then through the winter going into my senior year. And I actually really loved that because I still had the team aspect. And I ran all the team stretches and I was a team captain. And I really liked hyping the team up and everything. But at the end of the day, it's like, how did I throw? How did I finish? And if the team did great, that's awesome, man. I was there to pump people up. I tried to watch everybody and see how they were doing, but it was kind of the best of both worlds for me. So even throwing, though, I was starting to get a lot of pain, and I'm just like, I just like, all I really ever wanted to be in my life was an athlete, a professional athlete. So you just keep plugging away, and yeah, it's frustrating, and yeah, you have bad days, but you just like, okay, we'll keep trying to figure out what it is, and I'll keep pushing as hard as I can. And so then when I came to the University in Nevada and I started throwing, we kind of ran into the same things, man. I was just in pain. I'd go throw and like I'd have to sit there for half hour, 45 minutes before I could make it back to my car to go home. And about that time, after my second year, I had been working in physical therapy for a year and a half as a tech. I knew a bunch of doctors. And I finally spoke to one of the doctors that I kind of became friends with. And I told him about it. And I said, I can come in. I have insurance and stuff. And he's like, yeah, cool. Let me look at it, but make an appointment, come in. And so we came in, we looked at it, and he's like, man, I'm not sure. Will you give me a couple weeks? So I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem, doc. And I worked on his patients in the hospital. So like I would see him in the hospital and stuff too. And so he calls me up one day and he's like, hey, can you meet me at the Reno Athletic Club at like 4:00? And I'm like, yeah, sure, no problem. So I go to meet him, and I walk in and he's got this huge needle. I don't even know how big that damn thing was. It was huge. It had to be probably, I don't know, probably 4 inches long, 5 inches long. And it was a really small gauge. It was a huge needle. And it was attached to this gauge that was like measured in millimeters of mercury. And I'm like, all right, doc, what are we doing with this? And he goes, I'm going to strap this to your lower leg and I'm going to slide this into your deep posterior compartment. And we're going to measure the pressure inside that compartment. I'm like, okay. And he goes, yeah, then you're going to go run on the treadmill for as long as you can. And we're going to check it out, see what happens. I'm like, all right, doc, whatever you say, man. And he sticks this needle in my leg and he straps this gauge to my leg. And I'm like, all right, so do you just want me to go run? And he's like, yeah. He goes, oh, and by the way, you're already, I believe it was 16 or 17 millimeters of mercury. And he goes, you're not supposed to exceed 15. I'm like, okay, that's too much, huh? He's like, yeah, that's already high. So let's see what happens when you run. And so I ran maybe 5 minutes, and what I would get is slap foot. Because once it would get so pumped up and it would be so painful that I couldn't actually plantar dorsiflexion and plantar flexion. I couldn't do either one of those. My foot, I couldn't pick my foot up. It would just like flop. I could kind of keep it straight. So after I did it so long, I'd get what I call slap foot, where you just got to pick your foot up high enough that your whole foot comes up and it'll slap back on the ground. And it's probably pretty funny to watch. I've never got to watch myself walk when I do that. So I'm on a treadmill and I'm like, Doc, it already hurts like hell and I can't move my foot. And he's like, all right, come here, let's see. And I was at like 120 something, I think. So he's like, okay, I think we have the culprit here. He goes, you have chronic compartment syndrome. He goes, these numbers are way too high. And so basically what happens is you have the fascia that has the muscle, the nerves, the blood vessels and everything. And the fascia does not really expand or contract. And so my muscles keep expanding with blood. And then that pinches the nerves and it pinches the blood vessels. So that's where it creates all the pain. So I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? And he's like, well, I'm going to have you go see a therapist for a while. And so we tried therapy, which was a joke. It was just stretching. And he would get in there and try to stretch the fascia with these painful tools and stuff that he had. But it was in a deep posterior compartment, so it's hard for him to even get to, let alone if that actually works. And so the next thing he's like, all right, it's surgery. He goes, basically what we have here is you have a situation where if you keep doing this, it can become acute. And if it becomes acute, then you're in serious trouble and we have to do surgery. And he goes, if you keep irritating it, eventually tissue's going to start dying, becoming necrotic, and you're going to have your legs amputated. And I'm like, dude, I'm seriously partial to my legs. Like, I love my legs. So I go, well, let's do surgery. So this was actually a funny thing for me because being in physical therapy, and, I started doing cadaver work in high school. And I loved anatomy and physiology and kinesiology. And like, I was fascinated with the body. And I'm like, all right, doc, here. So can we do this? Can we just give me like an epidural? And then I can sit up and watch you guys do the surgery. And he's like, are you serious? And I go, yeah, I'm serious. I want to watch. And he's like, no, we can't do that. I'm like, come on, doc. I want to watch. I've seen surgeries already. It's not that big a deal. And he's like, no, man. He's like, we can't do that. And so we finally, I go through my insurance, or it's actually, I was on my parents' insurance and everything's covered. So I'm like, cool, let's do this. And I'm actually excited about this because I have never had surgery. I've never been knocked out. Like, I've never taken any drugs. Like, I had a brother who had alcohol issues and drug issues from a very young age. And I didn't think I could put my parents through that again. So I didn't drink till the first time I got drunk, I was like 20. First time I tried any drug, I was like 40 something. Any recreational drug, I should say. Except for steroids, which I went on HRT when I was like 37 or something like that. No, maybe 35. I can't remember exactly. That's another subject. So I'm all jacked up, which is kind of weird. But I got called for jury duty one time when I was probably like 19, I think. And I'm like, cool, man, I get to do jury duty. This shit's awesome, man. So I'd go into the court and I'm sitting in the thing. And so they call me up to the jury box and I'm getting asked questions by the lawyer, the defense lawyer and whatever the other lawyer is. I forget the name of that one. And they're asking me questions and the judge keeps looking at me and I'm looking at him like, what? What's up, man? And eventually the one lawyer goes, why are you smiling so much? And I go, what do you mean? Why am I smiling? And he's like, yeah, most people aren't smiling and you look happy. I go, of course I'm happy. I go, I get to be a part of our judicial system. I get to come into this court and see how a court gets or how it operates. I get to see you present your defense and the plaintiff and all this stuff. And I get to learn about all this stuff while I'm doing something for my community. I go, and I make like $7 a day. I go, this is great. And the judge kind of like, the whole time he's like looking at me and the lawyer's like, okay. And like in his head, he's going, you fucking weirdo, but okay. And so anyway, they picked me, but then on our first break, somehow they went ahead and settled it. I think it was like an insurance claim or something like that. So I didn't actually get to go to court. But I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool that I got to help my community and be part of the legal system and all this stuff. Well, surgery was the same thing for me. I was like, this is great, man. Like, I work on all these people, but I've never had surgery. I don't know what it's like. Now I get to experience it. That's great. And so my doctor friend, Dr. Webster, he's laughing at me the whole time. And I think my mom dropped me off probably. And I go in there and I'm in the room and they're like, okay, you got to get undressed and put this gown on and da-da-da. So I stripped onto my undies and I put my gown on. And then the doctor told me before, and I was throwing, so I wasn't really big. Like I wasn't big when I was a power lifter. This is before powerlifting. So I was about 270 and I'm like 6'1". So I really wasn't that big. But the doctor, he's like, all right, here's the deal. Normally we knock you out before you go into the surgery room. But he goes, I don't want to lift your big ass onto the surgery table. So he goes, we're going to keep you awake and then we'll knock you out in the surgery room. I'm like, all right, doc, whatever, man. And so they wheel me into like the pre-surgery room or whatever it is. And I'm talking to the nurses and the one nurse is like, okay, so you're stripped down, right? All you have is the gown on. I go, well, yeah, I got my underwear on too. And she's like, no, you can't. You got to be completely naked. And I'm like, I got to be completely naked? Like, what are they going to do in that surgery room that I need to be naked? I go, they're working on my legs. And she's like, well, it's just protocol. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So I do it. And then the doctor comes in a little bit later. And I'm like, dude, what's up with me not being able to wear underwear? And he's like, oh, don't worry about it. You can wear your underwear, dude. He goes, I don't care. He goes, that's just their weird stuff. And then the nurse comes over and she's got this syringe and they put an IV in and stuff. And she goes, all right, we're going to give you this. She called it a medication or something. And I go, all right, well, what's it going to do? And she goes, oh, don't worry about it. You'll like it. And I go, yeah, but what's it going to do? And she's like, it'll be okay. Don't worry about it. And so she injects it into my IV. And then she walks over to the nurse's station and there's like 4 nurses there. And they're all just looking at me. And I keep looking over and they're looking at me. And I look over and I'm like, what the hell is going on, man? And then all of a sudden, whatever the hell they gave me hit. And I just get this huge ass grin on my face. And I'm just like, damn, I feel pretty good. And I look over at the nurse's station and they're all busting up laughing at me. And I'm like, what? I feel good. And so they're all laughing at me. And then the doc comes in and they wheel me into the surgery. And I climb over on the table and stuff. And the doc's like, all right, yeah, we're going to do this. And I'm like, yeah, you already explained it, man. Let's just do this. And the anesthesiologist goes, okay, I'm going to inject you and you can count backwards from 10. And so he injects me and I'm like, did you do it yet? He's like, yeah, you can count backwards from 10. And I like count all the way. And I'm like, so am I supposed to feel something? And he goes, you're not getting tired? You're not getting groggy? I go, no, I feel perfectly fine. He's like, okay, let me inject you again. And I'm like, they did tell you that I have a huge tolerance to any medications or any of that stuff, right? And he's like, yeah. I go, okay. It kind of runs in my family and I seem to be like the highest level. So he shoots me up twice. I do my count backwards and he goes, anything? And I'm like, feel fine, doc. He's like, all right, let's do it again. So he shoots me up a third time. And he doesn't even have me count. He's just like, do you feel anything? And I go, no, I feel fine. And he's kind of like, huh. And he looks at Webster. And he's like, okay, I'm going to wait a minute. And he goes, all right, I'm going to inject you again. So he injects me again. And he's like, anything? Are you even a little bit tired? I go, nothing. I go, I feel perfectly fine. And so this goes on and he gets up. He's like, he shoots me the 6th time. And I'm like, yeah, I got nothing. I don't know what you're doing, doc. Like, double that shit up or something, man. And he goes, all right, here's the deal. I only got one more shot. He goes, I've never had anyone take 7 injections. And he goes, I don't have any more, and I won't be able to get to the pharmacy, get more, and get back in time for us to do this surgery. So if this doesn't work, we got to reschedule. And I'm like, well, all right, let's do it, man. I'm trying. Like, let's do it and see what happens. And so he injects that one, and like within like 5 seconds, I go, oh yeah. Yeah, I think this one's going to do it. I go, hold on a little bit. I'm like, okay. All right, yeah, I'm feeling it, doc. All right, man, I'll talk to you when it's done, okay? And he's like, okay. And then I like passed out. And so I wake back up. And at this point in my life, I had sleep problems. But quite honestly, I just thought I was a bitch and needed to toughen up. I thought nobody slept at night. I thought everybody was up. So I just dealt with it. And so the doc, I kind of halfway awake when they wheel me to the to my room, because I was going to have to stay over because it was a late surgery. And I'm like, doc's like, yeah, everything went good. And I'm like, cool, man. Great. And then I like went back to sleep. And then later on that night, my parents came and brought me a couple cheeseburgers. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I woke up when they were there and I wolfed down to 2 cheeseburgers and I go, I don't mean to be rude, but I think I can sleep right now. So like, I'm going back to sleep. And my dad just laughed and I went back to sleep and they left. And then they wake me up later that night and the nurse is like, have you went pee yet? Have you urinated? And I'm like, no, I don't need to. And she's like, well, you know, if you don't urinate in like the next 20 minutes, we're going to have to give you a catheter. And I go, huh? What? Like a catheter up my you-know-what? And she's like, yeah. Like if you can't pee, we need, I go, hold on 1 minute. And so I put my legs over the side of the bed. And keep in mind, I have these huge scars on the inside of both of my legs. I can't remember how many staples I had. It was like 20 or 30 in each leg. I mean, they're like 13-inch long scars. And he detached my soleus, cut open the deep posterior compartment, and like did all this shit, sewed it all back together. And I'm like, I'll get to the bathroom and pee right now. And I had a room with another guy. And as soon as I stand up, I start laughing hysterically. I have this weird thing where if I'm really hurting bad, I just laugh. And so I'm laughing hysterically and like taking these little bitty steps into the bathroom. And like, so I get to the bathroom and I make myself pee. There's no way in hell at 20 years old I'm getting a catheter put in. It's just not happening. And so I'm like, hey, do you need me to say this or can you hear this? Or like, I'm peeing right now. And she's like, yeah, we're supposed to record it, but whatever. And so I get back into the bed and I'm pretty much up most of the night after that. And about like, I don't know, it's probably 5:30 or 6 in the morning. And I called the nurse up and I go, hey, I'm ready to go home. Like, I want out of here. And she's like, well, we got to wait till the doctor comes in and, you know, get him to sign everything off. And I'm like, well, call his ass up. Tell him I'm ready to go. And she's like, well, we can't just call the doctor unless there's... I go, yeah, you can. I go, give me his number and I'll call him. I go, I'm ready to leave. And she's like, well, what? And I go, yeah, Jeffrey, Dr. Webster, he's my friend. Give me his number and I'll call him up. And she's like, well, okay, maybe let me go call him. And so she called him and I'm like, dude, get your ass in here. I want to go home or tell them to release me. I've had it. I'm ready to get out of here. And so he comes in and I'm able to get out of there and I'm walking. He's like, you can walk on it. Just be careful and don't stretch it too far. And I think that was a Friday or like that was a Thursday and I took Friday off work. Had Saturday, Sunday, then went back to work on Monday, which was quite an experience because I worked at a hospital. So I had to get patients up and walk them and everything. And I'm walking the best I've ever walked in my life on those days either. But I got through it all, and it was a cool experience. Like I never experienced nothing like that. It was cool. And so then I ended up getting a staph infection in one leg, and I also did part of my physical therapy at the time. I was doing wound care, so I'm like, cool, no big deal. Like I can take care of this, and because the doctor was a friend of mine and I worked on his patients, I'm like, yeah, doc, I got this, no big deal. And he's like, all right, I know you know what you're doing. And my manager at the hospital, he's like, yeah, take whatever you need, man. Like you can do it. So I did started with chlorazine baths, and then I figured out that I had the sinus tract. Like the infection did a big sinus tract, like almost all the way up my calf. So I'm sitting in the back. I do my chlorazine whirlpool, and I get that done, and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna knock this shit out. I'm gonna pack betadine strips up that sinus to just kill everything, and then I'll leave that up there for a day. Then we'll pull it out. Then we'll do another chlorazine bath, and go from there. So I'm sitting. I have these little skinny betadine strips, and I'm sitting on one of the mats, one of the tables, the matted tables in the PT area, and I have this huge long Q-tip. And I'm taking these betadine strips and I'm shoving these strips all the way like 12, 13 inches up my leg. And a couple of girls that I worked with walked in, and they're like, what the hell are you doing? They're like, how are you doing that to yourself? And I'm like, well, what's the difference if I do it on somebody else or I do it on myself? It's the same thing. And they're just like shaking their heads. Like, they're like, do you want me to finish that? And I go, no, I got it. It's no big deal. It's cool. No problem. And so I cleared that up. I kept rehabbing it. I took all my own staples out. I did all my own care and therapy and everything. And so I go back, I finally get back to throwing, and basically the same problem's still there. So we checked the pressure. It was still way too high. But my doctor's like, man, you having a staph infection in there like that? He goes, I really don't want to try to go back in and operate again. So he goes, it's kind of up to you, but I really don't want to do this with you already having the one staph infection, because that can be pretty bad too. So after talking, we decided that I'm going to need to just chill out and not keep irritating this. Where he's like, okay, if we can't have surgery again and you keep throwing, you're in the same boat. This could get really bad and you possibly could lose your legs. I'm like, well, okay, this sucks. This really fucking sucks. I don't want to lose my legs, but I had all these dreams of being a great thrower and like going to the Olympics someday. And so it's like, all right, football didn't work because of my compartment syndrome. Now I can't throw because of this compartment syndrome. So, and honestly, where I was at, I only had a couple years in at college, but I wasn't like this great thrower by any means. I would have had a long, long, long way to go to make it to an Olympic team at some point. So, it sucked. I want to say it was a hard decision, but it wasn't, because I like my legs and I didn't want to lose my legs. So it was like, all right, this is it. At the same time, it sucked because all I ever really wanted to be was a professional athlete. It's all I ever wanted to do. But there's just choices in life. And so I went, all right, I'm not willing to risk my legs. So this is a simple decision, but at the same time, it sucks. And I actually think it was after that I probably started drinking more and more, not to where I completely screwed up my life, but yeah, I was kind of borderline floundering around drinking, because I think I also lasted like a semester after that, or half a semester after that, because I'm like, if I'm not throwing, I don't want to be in college. I go, even this whole PT thing, at this point, I'm like, this is getting people after the problem's already been created. I would rather try to work with people before these problems create, because I'm saying 75% of all PT stuff could have been avoided if people just worked out, trained a little bit, paid attention to their flexibility, mobility. Like, there's so many ways they could avoid these injuries. And even then, what we did is we got them feeling better and then pushed them out. There wasn't even time to go, hey, let's fix why you got here in the first place. Let's get you going on the right path to being even better than when you came in here. So I dropped out of school, probably drinking a little too much. But that was a short period of time where I kind of learned that, hey, this is I'm wasting a huge amount of money. Because like with drinking was similar to my tolerance to medications, and I could drink a lot, even though I didn't have a whole lifetime of experience at it. So I kind of floundered around for a little bit. Then it's like I got really deep into motorcycles and into cars, and I was buying multiple motorcycles and fixing them up and then selling them and then buy another motorcycle. And I ended up starting a couple different companies until eventually I started a company and moved to Elko, Nevada on the other side of the state, which is a smaller town, mining town. And that's kind of where I found powerlifting. So in the end, the whole getting told I couldn't compete in the sports that I wanted wasn't really the end of the world that it felt like at one time. It was just kind of closing one door so that another one would have opened. Maybe I would have never found powerlifting if I had done shot put longer. And to be honest with you, I got much better at powerlifting than I probably could have ever got throwing. I don't know that for sure, but let's say that because it sounds better. And that was the one thing I found out after I had to stop throwing. I'm like, well, hey, I can still squat. Like, I don't have any pain squatting. So I could keep lifting, and I kept lifting. And I would kind of do some stuff that I learned from my throwing coaches and strength coaches. And then I would do some bodybuilding stuff. And then I would do like just lifting for health. And then I would try to lift for strength. And I just kept flipping things around, doing what I wanted to do because I just loved to lift. And then when I was in Elko, I'm lifting at one of the gyms in Elko, and I'm basically squatting like 5+ for sets of 5, like Olympic style, all the way down as low as I can go. And I'm pulling like 5.5 for sets of 5. And I don't even think I wore a belt. I don't think I even knew what a powerlifting belt was then. And, I was benching 315 for sets of 10. And two of the guys, Raul Lopez and Wade Jensen, they started this whole journey, caused me to be on this whole journey. Came up to me one day and they're like, hey, we're putting on a powerlifting meet. It's a bench press meet. It's going to be at the Mapes, or I think it was I can't remember the name of the hotel, Stockman's, the Stockman's Hotel in Elko. And you need to come. And I'm like, oh, cool. That'd be awesome, man. I've always been interested in powerlifting. I'd love to see a meet. And they're like, no, you're competing in it. And I'm like, what? Like, when is it? And they're like, oh, it's in like 2 weeks. And I go, I can't be ready in 2 weeks to compete in a meet. I've never even done a meet. And they're like, don't worry about it. It's a bench only meet. You'll do just fine. And I'm like, you guys are crazy, man. I can't do that. I'll get killed. And they're like, no, just do it. Come on. And they like hammered me. So I did it. And I did I lost like by over 100 pounds, but I still took second. And so I went and did the meet on a whim. I think I benched like 415 raw. No belt, no nothing. I'm not even sure I had wrist wraps. I might have not had wrist wraps. But man, it was so much fun and it felt so great to compete again. And then the guy that beat me, his name was Cyril Lewis, who's originally from Trinidad, and he was like a 10-second flat sprinter when he was in high school. And now he's this huge 330-pound, massive dude who benched like 550 or something. And I'm like, oh my God, like, look at that guy. That guy's huge. Like, I want to look like him. I even remember telling my mom, I'm like, look at that guy. That's how big I want to be. That dude's huge. And I ended up meeting him, and we became friends, and we actually competed at a bunch of meets together. And he taught me a lot of stuff. And one of the great things was he had like this Trinidad, like just mellow outlook. And I was this guy that got wired and amped up all the time. And I learned from him that like, hey, I don't have to be amped up in between attempts. I can be pumped between an attempt and then like calm down and then get pumped again. Because we were at one meet and he's like, hey, Chad, dude, I was out drinking last night. He goes, hey, man, wake me up when I'm in the hole. And I'm like, all right, like whatever. And I'm like, dude, how can he do that? How can he be like snoring off and then get up and go hit this big bench? And he would have me laughing in the back in between attempts and stuff. So I learned a lot from him, and he's a great guy, a great friend. But, sometimes in life we think that there's an end to this journey, there's an end to a particular journey, or that it's the worst thing that possibly happened. And really it's, if you keep looking, you're going to find something else. Like what do they say? When one door closes, another one opens. Like I really, after throwing, I thought it was done. I thought that's it. That's the last athletic endeavor. Like I don't really have a chance to do anything else now. Turns out I'm 27, 28 in this podunk town, mining town on the other side of Nevada. And this whole powerlifting journey just pops up. Like no idea, did not expect it. Like just out of nowhere, bam, here it is. And all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, like this is awesome, man. And it took me a year or two to really get things pinned down, because I eventually moved back from Elko to Reno, and I changed jobs, and I had these night jobs, and I like did one meet, then I tried to do another meet, but I didn't, because I was moving and stuff. And I mean, it took me a while to go, no, wait a minute, man. I like this. This is fun. I would like to see what I can do with this. I think I can be really good here. And, I also think a lot of times I was one of those guys who I wanted to do, like I said, I wanted to do everything on my own. So when I was throwing, I didn't really have a coach in high school. I had like going to the track camps to learn and then trying to do it all on myself after that. And even when I threw, because I had to work and go to school, I gave up my scholarships in the Midwest because I wanted to come out here and I wanted to work with the coach here. And we had some great, amazing throwers here. So I gave up my scholarships to come out here because I was good enough to get like local scholarships, but it wasn't like everyone in the world was looking at me. So I had to work and stuff. So even then I spent a lot of time still training on my own and tried to get there with the coach when I could. But I think finding powerlifting when I did, I was older. And that was the first time in my life where I went, after I got serious, I kind of started going, wait a minute, like I'm not progressing very fast. I think I should be progressing better. And I'm questioning the thoughts that I have compared to what people are doing. And it was the first time in my life where I went, you know what, Chad? You don't know enough. And the only way you're going to learn enough is to find really good people and be open-minded and learn from them. And that was when I went and found Dave Tate of Elite FTS. And I did all this research. So when I went to his first seminar, I go, all right, here's the deal. This guy knows what he's talking about. You found him. You researched him. He put up the numbers. He's coached all these other people. He's been associated with Westside Barbell and all those people. And he knows all these top lifters. I go, listen to what he says. And so I took these thorough notes at that first seminar. I lapped up every bit of information I could get. At that seminar, he goes, hey, I'm going to be here till tomorrow, and I'm going to go ahead and hit my dynamic bench in the morning if any of you guys want to come train with me. And like out of like 40 or 50 people, I think maybe 6 showed up to train with him. And I mean, I was there and picking his brain and trying to get all the information I could. And then I went back and started building myself. But I was open to listening to what he said and giving it a full shot. And even though I ran into a wall and some things didn't work, instead of just thrashing it and going, it didn't work, this is bullshit, I went, wait a minute. What he said made sense, and I picked him. If it's not working, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm not executing or doing what needs to be done here. And I'm like, somebody gives me their number and says, hey, if you have any questions, call me. I'm not the guy that's generally going to do that. But this time I went, hey, he offered. He obviously gives a shit how you do. So maybe you need to call him. And I called him, and I ended up where I could call him a couple times, and then got sponsored by him. And I've been with Elite FTS for, 20 years now, and I still write a column for him. So every time I ran into something, I go, you need to call him. You need to ask him. Don't just throw this away. And usually what it was is I was maybe not even doing something wrong, but there needed to be a tweak. And that's kind of what Conjugate is. And he would, in his way, instead of just telling me what to do, he always made me figure it out on my own and then said, okay, why aren't you doing it? So that was a huge thing. And if I had found powerlifting at 20, would I have been open enough to do that? So like what I'm saying is sometimes things do happen for a reason. Or maybe they don't. I don't even really know. I don't even know if I really believe that. But I do believe that if you stay positive and if you stay open, the universe is going to give you opportunities. It's up to you if you want to take a chance. So like I thought everything was done. That's it. I don't have a chance of being this great athlete anymore. It's over. Well, it wasn't over. I kept lifting. I kept training because I loved it. And then here comes along an opportunity. And thank God Raul and Wade kind of kept pushing me into it. And then once I did it, then it was up to me to take it further, which I did. And then I took it to being, I think we looked at my ranking up second in the world at one point. You know, I put in, I think my total and my squat were like the fourth highest in history at the time. To this day, they're still like top 10 of all time. Well, the squat, I think one of them's top 10 of all time. I don't really know. But it was because I kept it open, and even though I didn't think that anything would happen, I was open to the opportunity. Like I was willing to take the opportunity and to go, hey, maybe it's not over. Maybe there's still something else. And I've kept that attitude through the whole thing. I'm like, hey, I'd like to do a podcast. I still want to help other lifters, and I want to help people try to get through depression and suicide stuff. And I want to help people like clarify their minds and become more stoic and like be ready to jump on all those opportunities that are going to come along. Like life has ups and downs. Don't ever think that you're done with the ups. There's always going to be more ups. And when you're in the downs, learn what you can, because life isn't about trying to make an easy life. Life's about getting stronger so that you get through the hard times easier. And then you stay more aware to the opportunities that are around you and all the cool things that can happen. I'm 52. I'm not going to be the strongest guy in the world. I'm nowhere near as strong as I was. I can't possibly keep that kind of pace or those numbers up and live a long, healthy life. There becomes a point where you're not going to maintain all the strength that you had. There's a point where it's like, dude, I'm just trying to hang on. I just want to be a decent lifter for my age, or have a decent strength for my age. But that doesn't mean there's not other things out there for you to experiment and try with. Who the hell would have thought an antisocial bastard like me would have a podcast? But I do, and I have guests on here, and I have a blast talking to my guests. So anyway, that's the story of my chronic compartment syndrome in my deep posterior compartment. I think I might have it in my anterior compartment as well, but it doesn't seem to bother me. And if you noticed, when I went into the Highland Games, which was, we did that because my depression and suicide stuff got so out of hand. We really thought that I would probably end up killing myself if I didn't back away from powerlifting a little bit. But I wasn't ready to not compete at that point still. So we decided to let's back off of your heavy training. Let's do some Highland Games and have some fun. And I still kind of overdid that, but it gave me a little bit of a break, enough to get my depression and suicide stuff under control. But if you notice, when I first started doing that, whenever I would throw, I would wrap both of my legs, my lower legs, I would wrap them up with black knee wraps. And that was to help keep the compression down while I was throwing. And then I would take them off afterwards. And that allowed me to do the Highland games and throw again without aggravating the compartment syndrome to where I could possibly, it could possibly go chronic or go acute, I mean. And now the interesting thing is from being 380 and I'm down to 320. Well, I was down to 310 and then my sleep went to shit. So now I'm at 320. So I'm going to get back down under 300 again. I seem to have way less problems with the compartment syndrome. So possibly, I think maybe getting that big, I did stretch the fascia some. So now maybe as I get smaller, the pressure inside those compartments will level out and I'll be cool. Either way, it's not a major catastrophe. It's just chronic compartment syndrome. It causes some pain sometimes. I can't do some things that I would like to do, but it's not that big a deal. It's not a problem. Very grateful for all the other amazing things in my life. But that's it. That's the story. That's the end of this episode. Please, I got a bunch of things going on right now, and I have some ideas on where I want to take this podcast. I'm working on starting construction on a new building, a new facility, which is going to be a better podcast area, and be able to do some more things with possibly having guests come in and expanding on all that stuff. So please bear with me. I'm trying to grow this. This is like I'm in the beginning of my powerlifting career right here. And my podcast is a 1,700 pound total when I want to get to a 3,000 pound total. So that's kind of what's going on with that. That's my compartment syndrome story. I'm out. I will talk to you guys later next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to the Courage Barbell Unlimited podcast. For more information, please visit couragebarbell.com. Until next time.